So what's the attitude throughout the rest of the Asia Pacific countries? Are they for this? Are some for this? Are some against it?
The only well, it breaks down into for and against, as you say. The Japanese, with a new prime minister, we're not too sure, but he is conservative, and the Japanese, we think, are going to be saying, we want some of that, right?
So they want nuclear subs too. Yeah.
And the South Koreans have expressed a lot of alarm. They have been trying to open up a bit more, get a bit more openness with the North. And so this has come at a very bad time for them if there are more tensions in the region. But India, on the other hand, member of the new revived Quad, would also like to get nuclear submarines. So they're a bit annoyed, thinking that it's a white allied plot, which it is. Further into the region, the Indonesians and the Malaysians have expressed polite reservations about what's going on. They are always, the ASEAN countries are always concerned about great power rivalry crushing in on their community of 11 nations. And the only way they can exercise any influence is by hanging together. So they do that. And so anti-nuclear sentiment is strong within the ASEAN. Singapore is the only one I know of that has said, well, it's not all that bad an idea. Don't forget that Singapore services American nuclear submarines in its ports. So they're not purer than the driven snow, the Singaporeans. They're very pragmatic. And they also have a balancing act that they conduct with China, as the whole of ASEAN does. And that, quite frankly, is what we have been doing up to now, until we threw our hat quite clearly into the anti-China ring. I mean, only 3 or 4 years ago, we were saying all sorts of nice things about China and having all kinds of positive initiatives going on, and something 2018, 17, something changed that we weren't told about. It may have been what we do know about, which is the decision by Xi Jinping to be much more upfront and not to be pushed around anymore and just say what he thinks and get on this warrior track and have the foreign ministry people being much less polite than they used to be in the past. And then, of course, it's a question of who then reacted first. Was it us? Were they reacting to us refusing to go along with Huawei or the Belt and Road and all of this sort of thing? Or was it us reacting to them? And there are people in Australia, there are policy people in Australia who have been for several years advocating pushback against Chinese. We can't be pushed around like this. We've got to show them. With what? You know?
Mm-hmm.
and the folly of this is so clear to people like me. Earlier, I was going to say to you what the polls are saying, which is really quite surprising. I'm in touch, as you can imagine, with all sorts of people who agree with things I've just been saying, and they're all horrified as I am, and all kinds of new initiatives are being taken to protest against this thing, and petitions written, and protests held, and all that sort of stuff. But on the other hand, there have been a couple of alarming public opinion polls done, small in their range of people consulted, certainly, but a little bit worrying because 81% said that they thought that this new AUKUS thing would make Australia more secure. Can you imagine? More, not less, but more. That is how some people apparently think, those polled think. Secondly, there was another poll by a quite reputable think tank here in which they found that the opinions of Australians about China over the last 2 or 3 years are completely reversed. In other words, we used to see China as a great trading neighbor, terrific for tourism and students, and saved us from the global financial crisis, all that sort of stuff. Those opinions were around. But now that is completely reversed. And instead of 30% seeing China as untrustworthy, over 60% now see China as an untrustworthy country, which shows you how consent can be manufactured, as Chomsky said.
Well, you just mentioned that, yeah, you just mentioned Murdoch. And of course, we have Murdoch here with regard to Fox News, and we know how they can manipulate.
He's an American. He's an agent of foreign influence.
Yes. So is that where this change came about? This is, I mean, tell me well, we're rattling sabers with China, but we still trade. I mean, you can't go to Lowe's and get anything that's American made anymore, almost. Is it Murdoch? Is it the media?
It's partly Murdoch. There are other media, both in your country and mine, that are certainly not taking a very strong line on this. Murdoch has a lot on, he ought to have a lot on his conscience for the state of the world right now. I mean, the way they pushed the war on terror for 20 years and made people believe that they were in danger of terrorism, whereas in fact, they're much more in danger if they cross the road, much more in danger of guns, for instance, than terrorism. Yeah. All of that. But you see, terrorism sells newspapers, sells television. It's very sensational. It works a charm. And what I argue in my new book is that the terrorists know that too. So both the militarists, that includes Murdoch, the militarists and the terrorists are in a vicious circle, one stimulating the other to attack. And the more one attacks the other, the more it generates the very military industrial surveillance complex that we have and provides the money. And that's why it keeps going. And Murdoch is complicit in that. He's not the only factor, but he's a big one.
Okay. Well, what's the name of your new book? We can promote it here.
Sorry?
What's the name of your new book so we can promote it here?
Well, I've been writing it for 4 years, can you imagine? Because things keep changing and I have to keep going back and fixing it up.
Right.
But it's called Worse Than Terror.
Worse Than Terror.
And of course, the final act on which the curtain comes down is the pandemic and climate change.
Yeah.
And those are worse than terror.